Introducing Meta Ray-Ban Display, the world's most advanced AI glasses. With a full color display built into the lens of the glasses, it's there when you need it and gone when you don't. Send and receive messages, translate or caption live conversations, collaborate with Meta AI, and more. Be one of the first to try Meta Ray-Ban Display. Visit meta.com/Meta Ray-Ban Display to book a demo and find your pair.
Welcome back to another edition of the Disney Dish Podcast with Jim Hill. It's me, Len Testa, and this is our show for the week of Schmurz Day, January 22nd, 2024. On the show today, news, surveys, and listener questions. Then in our main segment, Jim and special guest Dave Bossert recount how Disney and Monsanto built Disneyland's House of the Future. One word for you kids, plastics. Let's get started by bringing in the man who says that if your friends or the government didn't come back in time to stop you, the decisions you're making can't be all that bad. It's Mr. Jim Hill. Jim, how's it going?
It's going well, Len. And this, that question makes me think of time travel films, and it's which would you'd consider the best? And there's of course, what is it? Time After Time from '79, the Nicholas Myers, the original Back to the Future, Tom Cruise's Edge of Tomorrow from 2014.
I had this conversation with Drew Taylor. I think that's the best Tom Cruise movie ever made.
Well, I mean, it's crazy. Just when you look at that and figure, how would you, if you were the editor, how would you handle that? But if we're talking about really great time travel stuff, we also have to mention from time to time the Timekeeper. That circle vision thing. Just the mix of Robin Williams, great vocal performance of Robin Williams, an amazing animatronic figure. And speaking of directors, Jeff Blythe, who directed that, who would have thought that the guy who did Reflections of China and Oh Canada and that sort of thing could pull out, sort of a tour de force like that.
The timing on that too was incredible. Also, I love the fact that Rhea Perlman became an animatronic.
Yeah,
like I think that's sort of like peak Imagineering right there.
No. It was a beautiful pairing, Williams and Rhea Perlman, and also Michael Piccoli, as Jules Verne, and Jeremy Irons as H.G. Wells. I really wish there was a place we could go to still see that movie. So.
Let's see if the Futureport 82 guys can get on that next after they finish recreating Epcot.
Oh, cool.
Also, shout out to the one English guy named Trevor.
Okay.
All right. Also on the show today, would like to introduce a special guest. Dave Bossert is the author of several books on Disney and Disney theme parks. And before that, Dave worked as an animator for Walt Disney Animation on effects for everything from Who Framed Roger Rabbit and The Little Mermaid to Beauty and the Beast, Aladdin, and pretty much every modern Disney classic of that era. Dave also worked on theme park attractions, including Seven Dwarfs Mine Train, World of Color, and more. And Dave is based in Los Angeles. Welcome to the show, Dave.
Hey, thanks very much. You forgot that timeless classic, The Black Cauldron.
We just saw The Black Cauldron. We went through a whole thing at the end of the year where I said I had never seen it. Mm-hmm. And everyone was like, oh my God, you got to watch it. The animation was amazing. And it was true. It was very good.
No. Well, I will tell you that when I was working at the studio, from time to time, I organized a special screening of The Black Cauldron in the late 90s, early 2000s. And it was standing room only in the theater, the studio theater, because so many people had not seen the film. I believe it. And it's not a terrible movie.
No.
It is sort of a bridge film, and I think part of what happened with it was it suffered because when it was released, it was during that transition of new management when Michael Eisner, Frank Wells, and Jeffrey Katzenberg had come into the studio, and that was the last film made under Ron Miller's leadership. And you know what happens when there's a leadership change. They want to just forget everything that the other guy did and move forward, right? And that's kind of what happened to it.
Yeah, but still, it turned out really, really well. I like the animation style on it. I thought the pacing of the film was excellent. Yeah, it was really, really well done. All right, before we get started, let's do a quick shout out to our Patreon subscribers. Thanks to everyone who subscribes to the show over at patreon.com/JimHillMedia, including Dave Kerwin, Mike Bradmer, Allison Fell, Antoinette Fornchell, Jillian Mack, and Matt Halbar. Jim and Dave, These are the Disney horticulturists busy crafting topiary for Epcot's upcoming Flower and Garden Festival. They say they're on track for colorful butterflies at the park entrance and the Fab Five near World Showcase. And although the topiary geese in Canada will 100% attack you if you so much as look in them wrong, they'll attack you in the most Canadian polite way possible. True story.
Excellent.
On to the news.
All right,
folks. The news is sponsored by touringplans.com. Check us out at touringplans.com. All right. Disney announced dates for Epcot's Flower and Garden Festival. It's February 28th to May 27th, 2024. A couple of interesting things there, Jim and Dave. One of them is that it looks like these dates are a return to pre-pandemic length of festivals. So the last couple of years, Flower and Garden had run to July. Now it's ending a month earlier on May 27th. And the last time it ended that early was 2019 when it ended on June 3rd. And I guess my question here is, does this mean we're going to have a gap where there's no festival between Flower and Garden and Food and Wine? Or will Food and Wine start in June? I know.
I guess, again, think about it. We've all but completed our Epcot transformation. I mean, we're waiting
that's
for,
what I was thinking. Yeah.
Communicore Hall to open sometime. In fact, I would be surprised if Communicore Hall isn't completed by the May close of Flower and Garden.
Surprised, Jim? Surprised might be a strong word.
Okay, all right.
Knowing Disney and Disney's construction schedule, would you really be surprised?
All right, mildly shocked.
Mildly surprised.
Mildly surprised. All right, but toward that end, given that that's what Epcot is being reconfigured as the festival center, the notion of really you're stopping Flower and Garden early. My next question is, so Food and Wine starts on June 1st?
Well, the only reason I think, and Dave, jump in here if you want, the only reason why I think Food and Wine won't start in June is first week of June is roughly the beginning of summer vacation, and Disney doesn't have any trouble filling hotels during the first couple of weeks of June. So they might think we don't need a festival then, we don't need the expense of the festival because people are coming anyway. It's just a thought.
Okay. But at the same time, again, you literally just spent years reinventing this place as Festival Central, and then it's like, we don't need a festival
except for Jim.
Well, one of the things that's happening though is that they're starting to put some e-ticket rides into Epcot. So will the festivals sort of not fall by the wayside, but get spread out a little bit?
You're saying, Dave, that you can't sell individual lightning lanes to people who are eating cheddar cheese soup in July?
I guess.
That's actually not a bad. That's actually a great idea because you take people out of the rotation of eating stuff at the festival booths to go ride rides. But Disney, you've already paid to get into the park, and you've probably already paid for Genie Plus. From a revenue perspective, it might be better for Disney if you actually just stay in World Showcase eating food.
Going on rides and hurling.
How we go? Well,
and then you have to eat again. Oh, this is Bossert's theory of festival timing. I like it.
There we go. All right. I just one other quick side question here. Okay, so you mentioned the Canadian cheese soup. Is there any possibility that the defibrillators that were deliberately placed on either side of Alfredo's, did they move them over toward Canada?
Where are those?
They are
exactly.
Particularly, thinking of someone eating cheddar, cheese soup in the heat of summer in Florida
in June. I can't wait. Yep. Also, I note that for the musical acts, they include modern English. If we don't get a melt with you sandwich at Regal Eagle, an opportunity will have been lost. I'm just saying. Also, there's a lot of Central Florida acts interspersed in there, including, I think, the opening dates with The Vibe. So good on Disney for helping those musicians get in front of more people.
Good to hear.
Speaking of events, Universal's also got dates out for Mardi Gras, which is February 3rd to March 17th. Musical acts include DJ Khaled and Zed, and that one's going to be packed because Zed is super popular. If you haven't been, Mardi Gras is a hoot, folks. If you can wrangle a spot throwing beads on one of the parade floats too, it's one of the best in-park experiences you can have. I 100% recommend it.
I was not good at it. There was
you were fantastic.
Oh no, there were a surprising number of babies and strollers that got hit right in the face. That, just
look,
no.
look. I'm saying that a couple of maimed children is far from the worst thing that's ever happened at Mardi Gras.
Well, there we go. That's some real hurricane fueled thinking there, Len. But okay, please,
exactly.
So.
All right. Speaking of Universal, our friend Seth Kuberski wrote in to tell us that Hollywood Rip Ride Rocket now opens 15 minutes after the rest of the park. So that's new for 2024. So that means that if you're trying to throw up right at park opening, you're going to have to wait 15 minutes for that. All right. Disney's got dates out for its after hours events. Those now run through summer, especially at Hollywood Studios. And we have an opening date for the new Fort Wilderness DVC cabins, which is tentatively July 1st. And those can be booked if you're an existing DVC member starting April 23rd. Looking forward to those.
You know, the last time I was in Fort Wilderness, camping was the first time I was in Fort Wilderness.
Oh,
and that would have been 1976.
Wow.
Right. So I think Fort Wilderness was just campgrounds in 1976.
Yeah, I think
there was no lodge. There was no Fort Wilderness Lodge there.
No, and one memory from when we camped there as a family, the campsites used to have as their base ground up seashells, and I don't know why we didn't have a drop cloth in the tent, but I rolled over while I was sleeping and woke up in the morning with this amazing pockmarked face from, sleeping face down in ground up seashells. It was
nice,
an interesting look.
Kids
Jim,
anywhere.
I think we were from the age from that time period when everybody on the Eastern Seaboard drove down to Florida and camped. And went camping. Which is just crazy. My first two experiences at a Disney park was Disney World, camping in Fort Wilderness.
I've camped, but not as a kid. All right, let's
see. I camped as a kid, not as an adult.
Not as an adult. You learned your lesson. Yeah, for me it was like I wonder what I was missing, and then I did it, and like, not much. So
there we go. There we go.
Yeah, okay. All right, we have time for a couple of quick surveys. An anonymous listener sent in a new Universal survey, and one of the things that I like about this is a question that says, which theme park would you say provided the best experience with each of the following? And your two choices are Universal and Disney. And the questions are, in terms of guest service, who provides the best experience? Then value for money, rides and attractions, seamlessness and hassle-free nature, ease of planning, food and beverage offerings, and customized or personalized visits.
I'm just curious, what do you guys think?
It's that question in the middle there about seamlessness that's a new thing they're asking about there. Is that when they say seamlessness, is that the new admissions media, you do the first time going through and then they do facial recognition. You can basically walk into the park.
Right.
What is seamlessness?
I think it means a combination of things like you can stay at the hotel and get into any park you want without having to make reservations. You don't have to worry about, restrictions on if you can go from park to park, because Universal never had timed waits to park hop, right? So I think it's looking at that. Ease of planning, you're looking at things like, can I get reservations? Do I have to make reservations for parks? Stuff like that. So I think the interesting thing for me is customized or personalized visit. I can't think of any way that Universal customizes or personalizes your visit.
Well, remember, we're a year out from Epic Universe. Maybe there's something coming over the horizon.
The second part of this was this question. I think it's interesting because of recent news. The question is this, and Universal says that it's optional. We'd like to hear more from our guests who may have unique experiences due to body size, dimensions, or different disabilities. Did any of the following apply to you or anyone in your party while you were in the park? Please select all that apply. So you've got things for like manual wheelchair or ECV, limb difference, PTSD or social anxiety disorder, oxygen tanks or devices, hearing disabilities, mobile limitations, including difficulty or walking or climbing stairs, cognitive disabilities, height below the minimum requirements, vision, service animals, and so on. And I think this is interesting for a couple of reasons. One is, Universal's in the middle of a theme park expansion phase. So knowing the specific limitations that guests have will help them build more inclusive attractions. And I don't think they can ask these kinds of questions when qualifying guests for in-park disability access, because as we'll hear, that might be an ADA violation. So a voluntary survey is a good way of getting this information. And the reason why I mentioned the ADA is you guys saw the news with Six Flags being sued over its use of the third-party disability service IBCCES.
Yeah. And
so this is, Dave, are you familiar with this?
No, not at all. I am familiar out here in California with there are some attorneys that go around and just make a living filing ADA violation lawsuits against small businesses like restaurants. The famous one was Clint Eastwood's restaurant up in Carmel. They had an ADA entrance that was in the back of the building. Not the front of the building, but the building was a historic building that was, I think, built in the 20s.
Oh, so it had historic status.
Sort of grandfathered in on it, and he fought that to the bitter end and won. Just to say, you're not doing that to me.
Right, that makes sense. The IBCCES is an Orlando-based company that many theme parks use to vet or to register guests who want to use their disability access services in the park. So Universal, for example, doesn't do that vetting themselves. They use IBCCES as the third party. And the interesting thing here is that the lawsuit that was filed against Six Flags claims that having to document the relevant disability is a violation of the ADA. And that's important because, like Universal, other major theme park operators also use the same company. And I would bet, Jim, valid American currency, that there have been recent discussions inside other major theme park operators about adopting IBCCES, and that this lawsuit might have paused that adoption. So this is something we should watch.
I agree.
Yeah. On the one hand, I get that, you shouldn't have to document your disability. I understand, or you shouldn't have to explain, your disability. On the other hand, we live in a world where people will take advantage of people who don't ask questions, right? And so I think there's a theme park operator, you're kind of caught between two opposing forces. On the one hand, you can't just take everyone's word for it that they need accommodation because some people are dishonest. On the other hand, you don't want to be too intrusive in asking those questions, right? So it's a difficult needle to thread there. We'll see what
absolutely. Just that finding that sweet spot that you have the information you need, but you respect individual privacy. It's that's hard to pull off.
All right, we have time for a couple of listener questions. Let's do this one. Lauren writes in with a question about Disneyland's Haunted Mansion refurb. She says, do you have any insight as to how long Haunted Mansion's closure will be? I can't imagine that the queue reconfiguration, expansion, and shop erection will take until 2025 to finish, but the holiday overlay draws such a large crowd that I would hope it'd be reopened by fall of 2024. Is Disney doing more work on the actual attraction? And do you and Jim have any insight? All right, so I think you and I talked about this, but I don't think on the show, right? What's the plan?
Well, again, that they did an extension of Haunted Mansion Holiday that I want to say runs to almost the end of January. But then the notion is that the second that's over, they want to have this thing up and running, all aspects of it, by the late summer, early fall of this year. And so I've been hearing, construction completion by the end of August with the notion of opening Labor Day. What have you been hearing?
Okay. Yeah, same thing. First week of September. Yeah. And that's normally the time that Haunted Mansion Holiday would reopen anyway. So that's a good guide. Yeah. I also heard, and the reason why they're doing this, I mean, part of it is they don't want to have Haunted Mansion under construction while Tiana's Bayou Adventure opens because it's on the walking path, right? So they want to get that done in advance. Also, they want to make sure that they have enough capacity, enough walking room, and frankly, enough merchandise locations for people who are going to walk by Haunted Mansion on the way over to Tiana's. So, yeah.
No, you're not wrong.
And have you heard the same thing about me as Disneyland's Tiana's Bayou Adventure is several months behind Walt Disney World?
I just heard that this past week.
Yeah.
Okay, all right, okay. You would know.
Yeah. And again, all I've heard is the difference, between the two projects, and the fact if you know back of house at Walt Disney World and the staging space that they have back there right behind, the old Splash Mountain, and it's wide open spaces. Whereas if you look at Disneyland, our friend Jim Schull, says, Disneyland is a Swiss watch, that whenever you put something in, something else has to go out. So it's really difficult to place to build. So this kind of caught up with them on that project.
Yeah, I get it. I would I still think they're shooting for late 2024 though for Disneyland, right?
Yeah, they are, but as you were just saying about Communicore Hall, it's like the term mildly surprised I don't think applies in this situation.
When we said Christmas, we meant Greek Orthodox Christmas, and we meant Chinese New Year, not regular New Year.
There you go.
All right, we have another question from Mike Lee, who says, Jim and Len often talk about Disney park decisions in terms of the expense, especially when talking about staffing. On a quick Google, back of the envelope calculation is that the average Disney cast member makes about $35,000 annually. So if you assume that benefits and payroll taxes cost 100% of that, that's probably an overestimate. We're talking about payroll cost of $70K. And so the question is what kind of numbers are you thinking about in terms of attractions that require a lot of cast members to operate? So for example, if there are 10 cast members needed to staff an attraction during a shift, and 2 shifts of work to cover park hours, you're looking at $1.4 million in staffing costs for a single attraction. That sounds expensive, but is that anywhere in your ballpark? And Jim, the reason why I mentioned this question is we've looked at the numbers that it took to run Galactic Star Cruiser. And Dave, have you seen these? Have you seen these numbers?
No, I have not.
Okay, so imagine you've got
but I'm imagining they're astronomical because they closed it.
Astronomical, get it? Okay. Well, so this was the interest. Yeah. So, and that's what it was. Like Disney realized, I think, pretty quickly that they were never going to make any money on Star Cruiser. And here's the reason why. Let's say that you've got someone who's an equity actor, like the captain, right? You've got the captain who's there, right? You've also got a backup captain on site in case something goes wrong. Somebody falls down some stairs, twists an ankle, something like that. So now you've got 2 captains for one role. Also, you've got a third person who's off-site but is available on call and thus getting paid something, right? And that's in case like the first 2 people get COVID, right? The third person is off-site, they can come in and take the role. And then because you're on a 2-day on, 2-day off schedule, you've got the exact same setup duplicated for the next shift of people. So one guest-facing role might actually involve somewhere between 5 and 6 people. And those are equity performers. That's where the expense comes in.
No, I get that. Yeah. And also it's worth noting again, when doing the back of the envelope calculation about your staffing costs, but when you think about the classic Disney theme park setup these days, that you route people through the gift shop, it's like, okay, well, we can offset that expense with with merch sales, and that that I think that was kind of the irony with Galactic Star Cruiser, that giant retail component. I mean, don't get me wrong, people had paid up front, tremendous amounts, but when it came to that sweet retail, after the fact, they only had those 2 tiny little shops. I mean, the one actually on board that was, in fact, had odd hours. And then there was that, the shop that they threw open as you were exiting, so you could get your gear that said, I have been on the Galactic Star Cruiser.
It reminds me that shop at the very end, like when you actually left the hotel, reminds me of like, when you're leaving the TTC and there's like that last gift shop right before you take the tram to your car. It's like, do you need a Mickey umbrella? Like this is where you're getting this. Yeah. I mentioned that too, though, Jim, because of things like, if you think about shows like Fantasmic, which has a lot of face characters. I mean, there are only so many people in the world who look like Anna or Elsa, right? And so the number of people who can play that role, who are willing to work for, for Disney and, work around their schedule, you start to get a filter of relatively few people willing to do that. And now when you talk about like you need a bunch of them and they're expensive, you see why, Voyage of the Little Mermaid didn't come back to Hollywood studios until they were desperate. All right, folks, we're going to take a quick commercial break. When we come back, Jim and Dave tell us why Disneyland's House of the Future was the real Barbie's dream house to all theme park fans. We'll be right back.
Maybe it's because I turned 65 in a few weeks, but I've been feeling kind of nostalgic lately, looking back fondly at things I used to do in my childhood, like, say, watching cartoons on Saturday morning in my PJs, sitting way too close to our family's TV set while I slurped down a bowl of some sugary cereal. Of course, now that I'm older, much, much older, and hopefully a little wiser, I know that, especially when it comes to breakfast, I really have to watch out for sugar and empty carbs. Which is why I am so grateful that Magic Spoon cereal is out there. Because Magic Spoon has all of those flavors you used to love as a kid, but with high protein and less sugar. And just listen to the 4 flavors you get with Magic Spoon's variety pack. Cocoa, fruity, frosted, and peanut butter. Myself, I have to admit, I'm a big fan of Magic Spoon's frosted cereal, if only because the front of the box features this Merlin-like wizard who's then riding a big blue bunny. Does that sound cool or what? I mean, the other reason I love Magic Spoon's variety pack is that this pack has 0 grams of sugar, 13 to 14 grams of protein, and 4 to 5 grams of net carbs. It's also high protein, has 0 grams of sugar, and is keto-friendly, gluten-free, grain-free, and soy-free. And did I mention it's only 140 calories a serving? Mind you, Magic Spoon is so confident in their product. It's backed by a 100% happiness guarantee, which means that if you don't like it for any reason, they'll then refund your money, no questions asked. So start the new year off right with a delicious bowl of high-protein cereal at magicspoon.com/Disney Dish. And use the code DisneyDish to save $5 off. Again, go to magicspoon.com/Disney Dish to grab a variety pack and try it today. And be sure to use our promo code DisneyDish at checkout to save $5 off your order. We thank Magic Spoon for sponsoring today's episode. If I were to ask you to list all of the subscriptions you have, would you be able to do it? More importantly, would you be able to cite the amount you're paying monthly for each of these subscriptions? I know that I wouldn't have been able to do that. Not until I signed up for Rocket Money, I mean. Once I did that, man, what an eye-opener that was. I couldn't believe all of the subscriptions I had, or for that matter, all of the money I was wasting. Rocket Money is the personal finance app that finds and cancels your unwanted subscriptions, monitors your spending, and helps you lower your bills. And what I really love about Rocket Money is, well, I can now see all of my subscriptions in one place. If I see something I don't want, I could just cancel it with a tap. I never have to get on the phone with customer service. Better still, Rocket Money will even try to get you a refund on the last couple of months. They'll negotiate to lower your bills for you by up to 20%. All you have to do is take a picture of your bill, and then Rocket Money takes care of the rest. Gotta tell you guys, I have so much more peace of mind, especially when I travel, because of Rocket Money. I just love how I now have access to all of this info about my subscriptions all in one place. And just so you know, I'm not alone. Rocket Money has over 5 million users and has helped them save an average of $720 a year, with over 500 million in canceled subscriptions. So stop wasting money on things you don't use. Cancel your unwanted subscriptions today by going to rocketmoney.com/Disney Dish. That's rocketmoney.com/Disney Dish. One more time, for the guy who's struggling to hear this ad because of all the noise his neighbor's snowblower is making, rocketmoney.com/Disney Dish. We thank them for sponsoring today's show.
This is a real good story about Bronx and his dad, Ryan, real United Airlines customers.
We were returning home, and one of the flight attendants asked Bronx if he wanted to see the flight deck and meet Captain Andrew.
I got to sit in the driver's seat.
I grew up in an aviation family, and seeing Bronx kind of reminded me of myself when I was that age.
That's Andrew, a real United pilot.
These small interactions can shape a kid's future.
It felt like I was the captain.
Allowing my son to see the flight deck will stick with us forever.
That's how good leads the way.
And we're back. All right, Jim and Dave, I think it's safe to say that architecture around the world went through a seismic change in the 25-year period after World War II. So like 1945-ish to 1970, right? There was this huge housing boom in the United States, fueled by first-time home buyers. And then as this started, a lot of people were super interested in basic questions about what a house is supposed to do, what it's supposed to have, and who it's supposed to be for. So fundamental questions that I think, deserve to be re-asked every generation or so. And as a listener exercise, I actually went through and did this. You guys should do it too. You walk through your house and ask, what's the purpose of this room when it was built? What was it supposed to do? And what does it do now? And I mention this because when the last house Laurel and I had a dining room, a formal dining room that we never set foot in. But if money, skill, and time were unlimited, how would you change your house to better suit your life? So a couple of other interesting things going on during this period. From 1945 to 1965, Arts and Architecture magazine sponsored the Case Study House Project. Dave, are you familiar with this?
Yeah, a little bit.
So 36 designs were created. 27 of them seem to have been built, almost all of them in California, most of them around Los Angeles. Around 20 of them still exist in their original form or very close to it. Very famous architects. So Neutra, Elwood, the Eames duo, Koenig, Eero Saarinen. Yeah. Walt would have been super familiar with these houses. I think, Dave, you point out in your book, Walt actually bought a kid house from Sears, right?
Yeah, well, one of the first house, I think it was the first house he and his brother Roy each bought lots next to each other on Lyric Avenue.
That's
and then they bought kid houses. And a lot of people today, I think if you talk to kids today, they aren't aware of this, but used to be able to buy homes through the Sears and Roebuck catalog, through Montgomery Ward.
Yeah.
There was a company, Aladdin Homes, Kid Homes. I have a whole slew of books on kid homes that are reprints of their catalogs that were put out by Dover Publications, and they're available. People can buy those online. Dover Publications has a whole group of these books, and they're wonderful because they're from that period of the craftsman style. Turn of the century, 1910s into the 1920s, before you start getting into Art Deco, you have that craftsman period. And what would happen is they would essentially cut all the lumber and that you need and drop it off at the site, and you'd have the foundation built and then build the house on top of that foundation. This actually had a brief emergence again during right after Hurricane Katrina hit New Orleans. There was an architect who designed what was called the Katrina cottages.
I remember this. Yeah.
And you could buy them through Lowe's. And again, they would dump all the materials at this lot, and you'd have a crew assemble the house. So amazing. Kid homes, big. Yes. It was a big deal.
So a couple of things here. One is that the style of architecture that emerged during this period, 1945 to 1970, I think is uniquely American. There are no houses around the world that are built in quite the same style. So if you think about like the Greenbelt house by Ralph Robson, or Neutra's Omega House, like those are American designs. They're not German, they're not Swiss, they're not English, they're not French. The other interesting thing was, and I didn't know this till I did research for Dave's book. Do you guys know that the 30-year mortgage was not really a thing in the United States housing market until after the war?
Yeah, no, I knew that.
Yeah,
I knew. Prior to that, if you wanted to buy a house, you scraped the cash together, or you built it yourself.
Wow, so this was the thing, and it relates to one of the key problems for the construction industry during this time. It was raw materials, both from a cost perspective and from an availability perspective, right?
Okay.
And this is why Monsanto was looking for ways to build new markets for its plastics, right? So all of these things are coming together. You got a huge number of people interested in buying homes. You've got Congress making it easier to buy homes. You've got Monsanto saying, what can we do with plastics, right? And then there's all this interest in American architecture out in California from things like the case study house. So Dave, why don't you bring us up to speed? Or how did the project for the Home of the Future get started?
Well, really, this project got started when the Monsanto Plastics Division in Massachusetts funded a research project at MIT. This is before, Walt heard about it. This was something that the Plastics Division wanted to do in order to expand market penetration for their products. But a lot of people didn't realize it or don't realize it, but plastics was in its infancy. A lot of the plastic technology, a lot of the plastics that were developed were a byproduct of World War II. And with the war being over, how could you take that material and put it to civilian use?
Yeah, you mentioned this in your book, right? So a lot of the ways the raw materials that you make plastics out of come from petroleum processing, right? It's a byproduct, and it was cheap.
It was chemical petroleum byproducts and new chemicals that they were creating. New molecular structures, and so they wanted to see if they could create structural pieces for home construction. And as you mentioned, there was an exodus from the cities into the suburbs. After World War II, you had the baby boom. People were getting married, having families, all the GIs that came back from the war. And, people were moving out into the suburbs. That's why you had like Levittown built out on
Levittown,
Long Island. You had
Levittown
built on Long Island. There's a Levittown in Pennsylvania. And I think there's a Levittown down in Florida, if I'm not mistaken. So you had those kinds of big, subdivisions being built with cookie cutter homes, and so there was a stress, I think, on raw materials.
Absolutely.
And there was also a limitation to what you could do with 2x4s. In building homes. And so they were looking at, could we do curvilinear structural pieces, create, new forms in architecture.
And this, I think, is one of the great things that you point out really early in the book, in your book, Dave, is that, Monsanto wasn't out there to build a 2x4, but out of plastic. They were like, they really wanted to reinvent the house. Like they would go back to fundamental principles. What are we supposed to be doing here, and how can we make it as pleasing as possible?
And I think one of the genius things about the design of that house was that the entire house is hanging off of a 16-foot by 16-foot core.
All right, so let's describe this. So they go to MIT, right? What does MIT come up with? What do they add to this?
So what they came up with was this 16-foot by 16-foot footprint, if you will, that could be used on a lot of different types of topography that might not be conducive for building. So that was one of the big, like a hillside, taking advantage of, sloped terrain that might otherwise be more difficult to build a standard home. And so, that was one of the genius things about it. You also have to realize that the design of the house, if you're looking down on top of it, it looks like a plus sign.
Yep.
And each wing cannot hang on its own without its opposing wing. So that's the way it was engineered to be, these cantilevered wings that are counterbalancing one another. So if you took one wing off, the other wing would collapse off of the structure, right? So when they built it, they built it with a wooden scaffolding form that held the bottom bents as they put the top bents on and connected everything to that central core.
And this was a new building technique, right? This hadn't been tried before.
Right, exactly.
And one of the things that you point out at the end of the book is, I guess Disney at the end of the lifespan of the house had gone back and checked to see how much the building had settled over its 10 years.
Yeah, it wasn't necessarily Disney. I think it was Monsanto and the other companies involved in the building of this project, because I think there was something like 30 other companies that were partners. And this was really a showcase for all kinds of new materials for living in a home, right? In this home of the future. But the wings had settled less than a quarter of an inch over a 10-year period.
Wow.
Which is really astounding, because I think a standard house would settle more than that. You know?
Oh, absolutely, 100%. Yeah. And a regular house probably does not have a million people a year traipsing through it either.
Yeah.
Well, 2 million on average, because you over the 10-year period that it was at the park, it had over 20 million visitors.
Wow.
So they build it, and it's this cantilevered plastic thing, and the each of the plastic shells is identical, right? It's the same form used, 16 times you said?
Yeah, it's the same shape, but the 8 lower bents have a floor plane built into them, whereas the 8 upper bents have the curved ceiling. You know, and
how do they build,
join at the end.
Okay. And how do they build things like ventilation, piping, stuff like that? That's all underneath or above?
Yeah, that was all built into the structure itself. In fact, in some of the photos in the book, you'll see sort of these round, they almost look like speaker covers at the end of the connecting
Yeah, you mentioned
vents.
this,
And those are actually ventilation, intake, outtake.
So Dave, walk us through a house tour, right? So we're in Disneyland. We want to go see the home of future living, and we're walking up the stairs. When we walk up into the stairs, what's the first room that we see?
So the first room you're actually going to see is the Adams for Living kitchen, right? And you're also going to be able to peer into sort of the dining family room, but in theory you're looking towards the Adams for Living kitchen, and you're going to then walk along the outer side, or the right side of that kitchen area, and the children's bedrooms are there. There's a doorway that goes in for the children's bedrooms.
Let's go through it. Let's go through one of the rooms at a time, and then we'll save the kitchen because I think it's the most interesting. So we see the kids' bedroom, and in the original design, this is for 2 kids, and I think the room separates. You said?
Yeah. So there's actually a movable, foldable wall that's made out of a plastic-like material. That acts as a room divider. So if you had your typical family where you had one boy and one girl, you had each had their own bedroom, but during the day you could open this wall up and have a larger play area. In later iterations of the bedroom, they actually put in a solid wall to divide the 2 bedrooms and hung a desk on either side of it. So each kid had a desk.
And what was your take in the book about the amount of space that was dedicated to the kids' bedrooms here?
I thought it was rather on the small side. You know, it was there wasn't a lot of space. In fact, you know, the entire house wasn't much bigger than I think I compared it to a cruise ship cabin. You know, maybe a little bit larger than a cruise ship cabin you know, the house was just under 1,200 square feet of living space. So your typical cruise ship cabin is about 250 square feet or so, which would be one wing. So one wing is about the size of a cruise ship cabin.
So each kid got half of a cruise ship cabin.
There you go. They got ripped off.
Because I think you actually mentioned Disney Cruise in this. And the funny thing is I'm going through this, and I realized that the bedroom that my brother and I shared growing up was smaller than half of this room.
Oh wow! Okay.
Oh,
I hope you had bunk beds.
We did, in fact, have bunk beds.
There you go.
All right, so that's the kids' bedroom. What comes next then on the tour?
The parents' bedroom. Now, the interesting thing, guys, I want to tell you about this. The first image in the parents' bedroom chapter, you see sort of the housewife of the future fixing a pillow on a funky looking chair that's actually called the bird's nest chair.
Yes.
And so this picture is obviously 1957. Just several months ago, the end of October, I happened to be in the Doha, Qatar airport.
As one finds himself,
halfway around the world. I had a layover there for 4 hours, so I went up to the business lounge, and as soon as I walked into the business lounge, there must have been a dozen of these chairs in a beautiful burgundy fabric.
Wow.
And I was blown away because I knew what it was right away. I did a double take, and I went over. I put my carry bags down. I tipped the chair to look underneath it. I examined the whole thing before I sat in it, and honestly, it was one of the most comfortable chairs I had been in a long time.
Really?
And it's still being made. It's apparently licensed to another furniture company that makes them.
Yeah, I mean, there's any well-known mid-century chair you can still buy from the original, like Herman Miller, who I think did a ton of stuff for the Home of the Future.
I mean, a lot of the Herman Miller pieces were in the House of the Future.
Yeah, and
they were cutting edge. They were noted furniture designers. One of my favorites, we'll get to it in the living room, is the coconut lounge chair.
Oh, fantastic. By the way, Dave, just as an aside, have you been to the TWA Hotel at JFK in New York yet?
I have not done it yet.
Let me know when you come to New York. You and I will walk through together.
Okay, I'd love to do that. We'll have a drink in the lounge there.
100%.
Yeah.
All right. So what else is in the parents' bedroom?
Well, the parents' bedroom, they have a nice bathroom. There's a built-in vanity. And there was some clever built-in furniture pieces that were done, I think.
Storage was really interesting, right?
Yeah. And I think they were very smart about, how they utilized the various storage cabinets that were built in, and how they double, a closet, the backside of the closet really doubles as the headboard for the master bedroom, and all of that kind of stuff.
The thing that I got when I was reading, the thing about the parents' bedroom, and especially the storage, was, to your point earlier, Jim, to your point earlier about people moving out of the city to get more space in the suburbs. Like this is a solution to a problem that is for city dwellers. This is a small footprint with very, very limited storage, like you'd see in New York City, not in the suburbs where you have a lot more space. So it was interesting. It was an interesting design exercise for me to see it, but I don't know how many people would actually want to live in that for very long, right?
I comment on the fact that, to me, this house, I've said this a number of times in interviews, and I've said it in the towards the end of the book. I think Disney should build a couple of these on the property of the Contemporary Resort in Orlando.
You would
allow
never
people
be able to get
spend
into them,
a week in them.
You would never get in.
Because to me, that it's like the perfect, like if you had a spit of land up in the mountains or out by the beach that you could build one of these on. It's a great weekend place. It's a great place to spend a week or two. I couldn't see myself living in it year round at this size.
That's ingenious in a
Dave,
way.
100%.
Like it would be the contemporary equivalent of the Cropper Creek.
Cropper Creek or the Poly. Well, Dave, why are people? Dave, you know someone at the company who can do this.
I
am imploring you, sir.
Something. I honestly think that this is one of those things where they're building communities around the country. It's like, do a subdivision of House of the Future someplace. Palm Springs, or someplace on the property at Walt Disney World, because I think that there's a huge market. People would love these houses.
Absolutely.
And I think if you update the technology and how it was being built using more sustainable materials and things like that.
Oh yeah.
It is so interesting you bring up the technology thing, because that in prepping for today's show, I actually went back to the 1953 Disneyland prospectus, and this was where they listed what was going to go into the World of Tomorrow.
Yeah, the
And
Magic House.
Well, that's it exactly. The Magic
Yeah.
House. And what's so funny about, you'll love this, Len. The Magic House describes how it has a genie-like device in that you can talk to it and say, please open the door. And it would open the door, and then you'd say thank you, and it'd close the door. And it's like, here's, the guys putting together the prospectus for Disneyland describing Alexa. A
70 years from now.
Yeah. No, that's it exactly. Again, but again, that was before Monsanto and MIT entered the equation, right?
Yeah, but by the way, when you look at the House of the Future, there's a lot of things associated with the House of the Future that were very forward thinking. I mean, that giant flat panel television in the living
100%.
room during one of the remodels, it didn't work, but it was the idea of it. And what do we have today? The camera at the front door. I mean, that's a ring.
It's a ring.
It's a ring doorbell. With a camera. It's so fantastic.
Yep.
By the way, Dave, I got to give you credit here, because I've read a lot of architecture books, and the thing that I think that your book does and that you did better than almost every other book is lots of photos. Like if we're talking about architecture is a visual medium.
Sure.
I do not want to see text. I want to see pictures, pretty pictures in color. And this book has them in spades. Like, you did a great job.
Thank you. And
really,
something,
really good.
What I try to do with all of my books is I try to have a balance between text and images. Because
really, really
people don't want to necessarily read everything. They want to see it. And we try to lay out the book so that the photos accompany the text that's explaining what's going on.
Well,
okay,
but you also hit that sweet spot between, I mean, the research is front and center. But also there's some great stories in this thing. I mean, about how the project came to be and the challenges once it's in the park and all that. I mean, it was a great read, but as Len mentioned, it's the images here I've never seen before.
And there was a lot of digging.
Yeah, no, it's fantastic. So let's continue our tour, and we left off right before the bathrooms. And Jim, I don't know if you've seen the photographs of the bathrooms of the House of the Future, but let me just pose this question to you: if the people that designed airplane toilets had to put a shower in there, that's what we're looking at here. Like, this is I once had in the very first house I ever bought, I once had a powder room that was so small. One of my friends commented that you actually had to make up your mind before you went in.
There we go. I was going to go. That's one of my favorite Dangerfield jokes. I had to go out in the hall to change my mind. Yeah, no, that's
Dave. This, I mean, the bathroom is a focus here, but describe what they did in terms of rethinking this fixture.
Well, I think you have to imagine now today, because this bathroom is the precursor to the one-piece tub shower fiberglass unit that goes into most new homes today, right?
Yes.
And so this is one of the great things that came out of the House of the Future, was being able to pre-mold those kinds of things, because prior to fiberglass and plastics, most houses would have a cast iron bathtub that's enamel coated, right? So, or some ceramic thing or something. But in this particular instance, they were able to mold the entire bathroom out of fiberglass in two pieces, a lower unit and an upper unit. And again, this is the precursor to the pre-molded shower tub unit that gets installed into all new homes today. For the most
you can go
part,
to Lowe's and buy
unless
them.
unless you're building some Beverly Hills mansion or something,
And I love the observation that you made about this type of construction for bathrooms, that it minimizes the number of seams and therefore the number of leaks, but it's also easier to clean. So
Absolutely.
It's not like they weren't just doing this as a what can we make out of plastics? It's like, how will this help people who live in them? Like, they really thought about what it was going to be like to live and maintain this house over time. Yeah.
But I'll tell you one thing. You look at the toilet, and that toilet is really for like a 5-year-old.
I was going to mention it.
It really
that
is,
looked, yeah, again, airplane toilets. Yeah. But it had, the other cool thing was, I think was it the shower that had the video screen where you could see?
So again, they had it mocked up. It didn't actually work, but again, this is our handheld devices now where we can FaceTime with people and see them. So this was supposedly, if you were in the bathroom and somebody came to the front door, you'd be able to go over to this little unit on the wall and be able to see who was at the front door. There's a little TV screen on it and some buttons for you to be able to talk to the front door or a different room in the house or whatever, and again, these things didn't exist. They were projecting these out as, this is the future. This is what will come. And this was something that actually does, come to fruition.
Oh, 100%. Yeah. And they were predictive in that area. And what was the lighting in the bathroom? This was sort of like a translucent panel thing at the top.
There was a really cool lighting panel that they used in here that was it used like a phosphorescent paint that was excited with electricity. So it was it glowed and gave you sort of this nightlight sense when the lights were out, and it was something that I thought was really interesting, and it just didn't really take off. It was like panelescent plaques that were made by the Sylvania Electric Products Company, and it essentially just created this cold, artificial, low intensity light. That was really like a night light, and I thought those were kind of cool. You can see one in the photo that's at the head of the bathroom chapter, and it's mounted on the wall above the toilet. And again, when the lights were out, that would be glowing and give you this sort of yellowish green glow.
Looking at that photo, I mean, this still looks like a modern bathroom. Like if you had somebody who was saying, I want you to design a futuristic looking bathroom for a space epic I'm going to film, and they'd be like, how about this? And you'd be like, oh my God, that's exactly what I want. That's very futuristic. Yeah, we built it 70 years ago.
There was about to say, that somebody talked with Kubrick, for 2000.
Exactly. So. All right, Dave, let's talk about the living room and the kitchen. Let's start with
the living room to me was really one of it has one of the most fascinating pieces to me, and that's the coconut chair. And the Herman Miller company is still making the coconut chair. You can still buy it with contemporary fabrics. You can select, and it's like a $4,000 to $5,000 chair, by the way. And one day I will get one of those. But I was just fascinated by this because George Nelson designed this. He was inspired by a broken piece of coconut shell. That's why it's called the coconut lounge chair.
That's right. You mentioned the story in the book. Yeah, it's fantastic.
Yeah. And again, I imagine this being as comfortable as the bird's nest chair that I sat in back in October. And at some point I will sit in this chair, whether I buy it or go to the Herman Miller showroom. But the other interesting thing about the living room, that it has an Eames chair in it. When you see it, it's ubiquitous from that time period. They still make those chairs, but I also love the sofa, which
I love the sofa. I was wondering if you were going to talk about this.
A back bolster that you could move, so you could be facing one way or face the other way just by moving the back bolster. And I just thought, how ingenious is that? And why aren't they making that today?
Literally the first thing I thought. So Jim, are you familiar with this? Did you see it?
Yeah. I mean, it's an amazing design, which again, I remember seeing, well, again, film from the 50s and the 60s of, the housewife doing, moving this piece to set up for a party or that sort of thing. And it's like clever, but.
All right. So let me describe it for our listeners who haven't seen it. So you have a sofa, right? And it's you've got a flat cushion area, right? And then you've got the back, which I guess goes up, what, Dave, a foot, 18 inches or so?
Yeah, it's sort of a low back.
It's a low back, right? But the interesting thing is that the back is tied to a pivot point on the middle side of the couch, so that you can actually swing, like pivot it. You move it from one side of the couch to the other. And I think, Dave, you had pointed out, if you wanted to watch TV, you pushed it one way. And if you wanted to look outside of the windows, you just pushed it the other way. So the couch didn't move.
No.
Just the position of the cushions moved.
Right. And it was also a split sofa, so you could move one section to the back and the other side, and so it's almost like a settee.
Oh, I didn't know that.
Right,
Oh,
where
really?
you two people could be sitting facing each other.
Yep.
Oh,
If that makes sense.
Yeah, I didn't see that. That's
You know,
fantastic.
and by the way, the other fascinating thing in front of that, well, for let me just say, with the sofa's on a wooden platform, right? And it gives the sense that it's floating in the living room, similar to the house floating on the foundation. But in front of the sofa is another very cool thing that I thought, why isn't IKEA making this? And that is a reversible coffee table. So you could flip the coffee table top off the base, and you could have either a light or white surface, or you could flip it over and have a black surface.
Why is no one doing this?
I know, and I just thought, wow, that is just really ingenious, and there's no fastening. If you look at the design of it, it fits snugly into a metal base. Just by setting it down. There's little posts sticking up that keep it in place. So I just really love the fact that they had this, and there's also a great picture of Lily and Disney sort of inspecting the house before it opened to the public. And I wanted to make sure I put this in there because of the fact that you don't see her very often.
You don't.
Right.
You don't.
Is that a fireplace or a heater?
Yeah, it was a fireplace, but a non-working fireplace.
But still, we can make it work, right? We have the technology.
There we go.
Yes,
I love the color photos in this section because it shows the color choices, the palette choices that were made. And the interesting thing here is, like, anytime you talk about like House of the Future, the concern is always that it's going to look sterile, like a hospital operating room. And I think you pointed this out, Dave, like the very first version of the House of the Future that opened up was different after Imagineering did their redesigns a couple of years later, right?
Absolutely.
I think the most striking changes were in the living room, I think.
Yeah, and when it first opened, it was a very clean design. And so with the different iterations, they were using sort of the cutting edge furniture design of that day, to be able to put a little bit more warmth and color into each of the rooms. And quite frankly, when you look at the spread that's in the living room chapter of the remodeled one that and it shows the large the page before that, I think it is the big spread. That to me is sort of the sweet spot for the interior design of the living room. What I love is they're taking that sofa, they're using the curve of the back wall of one section, they're following that curve off, and the space that it creates behind it, a triangular space, becomes a desk. And I just think, again, it's really efficient use of the space and applying some, I think, eye appeal to the design and the design thinking that was going on in it,
No, this is the thing. I mean, they thought about, like, how are people actually going to live in this? And I think for a theme park thing, amazing. And so, Dave, so you mentioned this, this iteration, and is that a plastic floor?
That's carpet. Acrylon carpet.
There we go.
I might add.
We're going to do a whole thing, Dave.
Monsanto Acrylon.
Yeah. There we go.
And then they changed the color of it to blue and then to like a rust-colored orange, right?
Yeah, absolutely. And if you look at the rust color one, that's more of a throw rug that's been put down.
If I might,
a large throw rug that was cut to those dimensions.
If I might interrupt here for just a sec, though, that you mentioned the color, and that's the thing, going through this book and looking at the color palette of the 50s and the 60s, I have to ask, when you were actually doing the photo restoration for this thing, how many times did you get the proofs back and it's like, that can't be the real color.
this color doesn't occur in nature. What are we doing? Can we calibrate this?
It's like, nope, that's the color, guys. So
yeah.
The other thing that I love about this is, wasn't Imagineering, especially John Hench, involved in one of the redos?
Yeah, well, actually, John Hench was put in charge of the House of the Future for its entire 10 years.
Oh,
Walt appointed him to site it at the entrance to Disneyland, and so he was sort of like the show designer, if you will.
All right, Dave, I know we're running short of time here. We didn't talk about the dining room or the family room of the future. We didn't talk about the opening day or public reception. Here's what I suggest. Everyone should go out and buy this book and read it for themselves. I think it's a fantastic addition to Disney theme park history, and I think you did a great job on this, Dave.
Thanks very much. I really appreciate that. And the one thing I will say is that towards the back of the book, we talk about the legacy of the House of the Future, and the Howard Johnsons in Anaheim, right next to Disneyland, built a retro House of the Future suite, which is really fantastic. And it was so fantastic. I talk about it in the book because I got a chance to stay in it before it opened to the public while they were still kind of finishing it off. And again, it's such a wonderful experience. That's why I think Disney should build a few of these down at the Contemporary Resort in Orlando, because I think they would be booked year round,
100%. I would take my money now.
Yeah. Okay. By the way, if the listeners want to get a signed copy of the book, a signed copy, you can get that from theoldmillpress.com. And for your listeners, if they use the code SAVE20 when they check out, they'll take another 20% off the discounted price already. Save
Fantastic.
20. And if they don't want to buy it at the Old Mill Press, you can buy it at Amazon, Barnes & Noble, or your local bookstore. If you have an independent bookstore, they can easily order it for you. And I always say, support your local bookstores.
The book's title is House of the Future, Walt Disney, MIT, and Monsanto's Vision of Tomorrow.
Thanks very much for coming on, Dave. Real quick, where can people find you online?
They can find me at davidbossert.com, and I'm also on all the social platforms, Facebook, Instagram, X, formerly Twitter, and LinkedIn.
Fantastic. Thanks again, Dave. Go to your call. Thanks for being on.
All right, thanks. Thanks, guys. It was great talking to you. Take care.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
All right, folks, that's going to do it for the show today. You can help support our show by subscribing over at patreon.com/Jim Hill Media, where we're posting exclusive shows every week. This week's video, episode 4, is the history of Mickey's Birthday Land. And I won't tell you which of the cartoon houses there was inspired by Jim Schul's mother-in-law's house, but it's true. Check it out at patreon.com/Jim Hill Media. On next week's show, Jim tells us how the Imagineers handled Walt's decision in January of 1955 to add Tomorrowland to Disneyland's opening day lineup, giving them just 6 months to get it done. I've seen archival footage of this, and it is amazing. Can't wait to hear it. You can find more of Jim at jimhillmedia.com and more of me, Len, at touringplans.com. We are produced spectacularly by Eric Kersey, who'll be giving posture, footwork, and rhythm tips at February Frostbite, the Montana Tango Festival, on Saturday, February 24th, 2024, at the Elks Lodge number 383 on Pate Street in beautiful downtown Missoula, Montana. If you think the subtle differences between tango and milonga are one of life's great mysteries, this is the event for you. While Eric's doing that, please go. Chip's laughing and I'm laughing and I'm laughing. While Eric's doing that, please go into iTunes and rate our show and tell us what you'd like to hear next. For Jim, this is Len. We'll see you on the next show.